Well, thank you so much, Ian, for joining me today. This has been a long time coming. I'm so happy we finally get to do this. We're going to walk people through the amazing journey of Parker Clay and sort of, your journey as a family as well and starting this brand and sort of the impact it has. And we're just going to go a lot of different ways. But let's start, maybe around the beginning, let's say around 2011 when you and your wife, Brittany, traveled to Ethiopia to adopt your daughter. That seemed to be sort of a point where things got rolling. So if we want to start there, let's do that.
Yeah, I would love to. And Grant, thanks for having me. I know you guys have been such great supporters and just with us for a lot of the journey, which has been fun to be through it all together. So yeah, it's really started back. I would even say we could go way back.
Yeah, let's do it.
We go back to when my wife and I met in high school. Really was the origin. We were high school sweethearts. We went to college together. We got married as we were kind of finishing up college here in California, and we started building our family. Had our first two sons. So my first son was Parker. My second son was Clay, and then we started talking about having a third, and that was when the conversation of adoption came up. And I think it's where kind of the journey starts to unfold for us, because we would read statistics like 160 million orphans in the world. And that number I didn't know how to metabolize such a big, but what I could do is I could see my two sons and I went, well, what if that was Parker? What if that was Clay? And that changed the perspective for me in such a different way. And I think that's what really has grabbed our hearts ever since, even in what we do today, is that we could talk about the big statistics and the numbers, but really when it's about a person with a name and a face, it makes it different. And that is really what, galvanized the thought of, okay, we're open to this adoption, but from where? And, kind of a longer story short, we looked at a number of different countries, even looked domestic here in the US, and we just landed on Ethiopia. Right. And in hindsight, easy to look back and go, that makes a lot of sense. But in the beginning, it was, hey, let's do this. Let's go to Ethiopia. We felt like that was the right place to be. And in 2011, we got matched up with a little girl to adopt. We went to Ethiopia for the first time. And that really, being in Ethiopia, seeing the country, seeing really kind of a different narrative. I think the more we travel, for any of us, right, around the world, we see things differently, not just through the lens of media or newspapers or other people, but for ourselves. And the country was just stunning, beautiful country, beautiful people, incredible heart, and it was different, I think, than the narrative we expected. And it really kind of grabbed our attention beyond just even adoption. And so we brought home this beautiful little girl, our daughter, from Ethiopia back to California. And my wife and I kept going, how do we get more involved? Like, what else can we do? And we started talking different organizations, nonprofits, for-profits, like anybody who we could talk to. And the question we would ask over and over again was, what's needed, right? How can we really have an impact? And I think when people were really honest with us, they would say, hey, what we don't need is a burden. What we don't need are handouts. What we want are opportunities. And so we heard that loud and clear. And one of the organizations we connected with was a group that was helping women out of prostitution and trafficking. And the biggest thing was, hey, we need other jobs to put these women into and create for them. And so, again, kind of another long story short, we ended up going, hey, well, maybe we can help. And then we went, how could we help? Yeah. We went through all the versions of, we could write a check, we could support them, we could do like some other business thing. And then my wife and I were like, maybe we should move there. And so we did. We literally bought one-way tickets, sold everything we had. Wow. And in 2012, standing at the airport going, this could be one of the best or worst decisions we've ever made. But we had our family in tow, moved to Ethiopia. So that was 2012.
Wow. And that was you, Parker, Clay. What's your daughter's name?
Selah.
So there was you five that landed in 2012, correct? That was the family at that point?
Exactly.
And so at this point, sort of a an impact sort of fashion brand, was that even in the ethos at all? Like how did it snowball into starting the business, right? Starting the idea of, okay, let's actually start a business, and we can then start the employment route with these women, and then obviously the economic development that happens from there, and then just the domino effect of things that change. But how did the business side come into play?
Yeah. So we moved to Ethiopia without Parker Clay really in mind. I guess I'd like, Parker Clay literally were born, but Parker Clay as a business was not born.
Right.
And we went there because we saw a need. We wanted to work with these women to create skill sets and training and opportunities for them. And keep in mind, this is 2012. While living in Ethiopia, something pretty dramatic happened over in Bangladesh. There was a factory called Rana Plaza.
That's right. Yep.
That collapsed, and 1,135 people died. And that truly woke up the world to this fast fashion movement, right? Everybody was like, wait a second, were my clothes made there? And we're living in Ethiopia seeing firsthand people who are looking for meaningful jobs, gainful employment, ways that they can really, create a livelihood for themselves and a good one at that, and here people across the world and another part of the world are really sacrificing their life for fashion. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were always looking for ways to find, something that was also sustainable. And at the time, there was some other brands, and I love Tom's shoes for pioneering the space, but we all know now that they're a better model, right?
Yep.
But they pioneered something, and that was really, and there was a few other brands and things that were more, I would say, trinkets, right? Things that people would buy as perhaps more of a philanthropic, charitable purchase, not something that they wanted, nothing that was more premium. Those were all kind of dedicated to, European brands and things like that. We really we always question that. Why can't we build something that, has that appeal to the world, to the fashion brands, but also is sustainable and takes care of the people behind it? And that was when it was Brittany's birthday in 2013, and we were looking for. There's no big shopping malls and stuff like that. That it's harder to do some shopping there back then. And we found this leather bag at one of these small markets, and it caught both Brittany and I's eyes on just the style and what it was. And we look inside of it, we're checking it out, and it says "Made in Ethiopia" on a tag. And on the back of the tag, there's a phone number. And so we're just both going, wow, maybe he can make some other stuff for us. And so we called, and it just we started going down this path. We met this guy, started talking about the industry, and I'm asking him, is there a lot of leather here? Just not informed at all. And he goes, yeah, there's a ton of leather. Do you not see the goats and cows and sheep everywhere? And so we went to a tannery, and at this tannery, there was 2 just massive shipping containers being hauled away that day. And they're loading them with leather. And I asked the owner where he was shipping it to or what he was doing with it. And he goes, oh, I'm shipping that to Italy. Mm-hmm. And that was the light bulb moment, right? Where we are with, all these women that are saying, we want jobs, we want opportunities, we're ready to go to work, we're hungry for it. And here is this premium material that the world is really not even talking about. At that point in time, it was just beginning this whole sourcing and how things are made, where they're made. And I'm seeing containers with leather going to Italy. And immediately I think of all the Italian, and European brands that are branding themselves as that premium. And so we went, hey, we need to make things here. This is it. We can create a premium product that people both love to wear. It makes them look good, but it also makes them feel good. And that was really when Parker Clay was born. We started with a few designs, kind of Brittany and I just coming up with some designs we liked. We'd bring them back to California and show friends, and people are like, oh, where'd you get that? We're like, oh, cool. People like this, and so we did that for a couple of years and just started scaling the business.
Just really quick on the name, how long did that take? Was that did it hit you right away, or was that a struggle? Was there anything named before it? And then
yeah, good question. It was actually one night in Ethiopia. It was fun. It was fun. Often, power would kind of turn on and off sometimes at night. And so we were trying to come up with a name, and I think we pulled like an all-nighter, and just on pieces of paper, we would be sketching out names. We probably had, I don't know, 100 names.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I think we wrote Parker Clay in the middle, and it just like became one of those aha moments of, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah,
the name was literally right in front of you the entire time with your two kids.
Yes, literally right in front of us, literally right in front of us. And meaningful, right? I mean, the whole really
totally, man.
reason behind what moved us to adopt, what moved us to the country, it was like us looking at these boys saying, this is personal to us. And similarly with this brand, right? Like this brand is personal to us.
When you started to get product made, at what point was it you actually were able to, I guess, start hiring women? That process of like, okay, we know we can make this stuff, but we really need to put processes in place where we have this employee sort of, this job creation infrastructure. And obviously it's all dependent on customers and when they purchase things. But I mean, just getting an office set up, and whether it's sewing machines or whatever you need, what was the process of, was it going to the nonprofit and saying, hey, we're going to do this? Is there, a particular subset of women that you think would benefit from the training? Can they be trained? Like, what was the process of really just getting the sort of impact ecosystem set up?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and a really important question. I think, especially for other entrepreneurs that are looking to do good and create an impact, was we were working with this nonprofit called the Little Women at Risk. Beautiful nonprofit that was started by an Ethiopian over 20 years ago, doing incredible work with these women who have gone through some pretty serious life trauma.
Right.
And, for us, we were working kind of inside this organization too, trying to understand it and understand that trauma a little bit more. And our hearts wanted to, like, obviously you want to hire everyone, right? You want to bring everybody in. And it was interesting as we observed living there, right, for a few years, that process was really important, because some women weren't ready to be employed in that way. Some women didn't want perhaps to work in that industry or find something else. And we worked really closely with them. And I would say even today, we've kind of developed, I would say, a little bit of a special part of what we do is that we figured out how to kind of harness this nonprofit, for-profit world, right? In this intersection of profit and purpose, where this nonprofit that we partner with does something so well and so good we can't do, right? They counseling, rehabilitation, and work with these women to prepare them for entering into the workplace. Then we do something that nonprofit can't do, right? And we do it better than they could do. As a for-profit business, we can bring them in and do training. We can prepare them for, what that's going to look like, and then create a great job for them. Not because we're thinking it's a charitable handout, but because we create a healthy work environment with all the opportunities to thrive. And it's been, there's been definitely a journey on that, right? When we first hired a few people, like, we wanted to hire everybody we could, but we had to hire slow. And I think it's one of the things why I love being a for-profit in the space that we are, right? It's not just a for-profit. We certainly do so much more. And I think good business is having that impact, right? And we should be doing things the right way. And it's one of the reasons why we became a B Corp and everything we do as well. But we started with a few employees, a few people that were from that nonprofit, and a few that weren't. And it is a journey, right? I mean, signing those first leases and getting that space, like, I remember, it feels heavy. It feels like, oh my gosh, we're doing this, and I don't know what the future looks like. And, and then fast forward even to today, where we've got a couple hundred employees there in a massive factory with tons of machines and everything else. I mean, it's like, you kind of, it's hard. You don't just like arrive, you take it step.
Yeah, totally. Through the interviews that I've had when you're going back to what you're saying about nonprofits can do things really well, and then you have a for-profit entity, it's almost like building something on top of the infrastructure that they built. And I've seen a few cases like that, talking to two founders where they found a really great nonprofit partner that really kind of did the hard work, like the really hard work at a foundational level, whether it was women in situations like you saw and you dealt with, or it's children, whoever it may be, right? Maybe it's there's a bunch of different causes out there. There's a bunch of different, there's domestic shelters, homeless shelters, whatever it may be. There's some amazing nonprofits doing things. And I see like founders kind of want to start maybe like a sister nonprofit, or there's a lot of ways to do the nonprofit thing. But I'm like, there's like nearly 2 million nonprofits in America. You can find one that's doing some really, really amazing work that you can sort of build off of as a company and as a brand. And I've seen founders transition from being a nonprofit and having a struggle. They built the hard stuff, like they kind of built this quasi supply chain that wasn't intentional, but they've been training women for so long, and they had these materials around, and all of a sudden they woke up one day. It's like, you know what? We could just build a brand. Like we can go direct to consumer. We don't need to go to these expensive shows and try to pitch to wholesales and try to sell our story all the time. We can sell our own story. And we built, 10 years, we built like this pipeline, and now we can go direct to consumer with the products that we make. So I think that it was such just a great point you made, where there's nonprofits doing really, really amazing work on the ground that's very difficult, and that for-profit companies can't do. They're just not going to be able to do it as good. And vice versa, there's an opportunity for founders to look at some of these opportunities and say, hey, can we build something off of what they've done and really create that next step for transition for individuals, right? And come work at a brand or a company that can employ them. So I just wanted to say, it's kudos to that, because that is such a transition and a journey that I think we as founders need to like look at a little bit more and say, hey, how can we build these blocks on top of what nonprofits have already done?
It's already there. Completely agree. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And as you learn more as a leader and grow, right? Like that journey, I think, is do what you do really well and don't try to do everything, because you just won't be able to do everything well. So I've found that to be very, very true with what we're doing in Ethiopia.
I want to go around to the business side a little bit. There's obviously you've had a lot of lessons learned at this point, right? And I guess just walk us through the journey of growth, and just that idea of, hey, we hired 5 people, now we're hiring 10, now we're hiring 20, now we're hiring 30. We have a new product line coming out, right? Like, because you guys didn't have a background in any of this, right? So talk us just through that founder and business journey and the dynamic of you and your wife building this together. that has to be such a cool thing to do when it works, right? That has to be,
when it works.
Yeah, when it works, right. But just talk us through the business journey of not being from that world and sort of building something brick by brick, day by day, year by year.
Yeah, I love working with my wife. She's my business partner. She's my best friend. I mean, we have so much fun doing this together. And at the same time, there's moments where I'm like, do I answer this question as your husband or as the CEO of Parker Clay? I'm not sure. Could be different responses. But yeah, when we started, again, it was just Brittany and we had these ideas sketched out. We made the first few products, started with a few employees. In 2015, we got some difficult news that our daughter, Selah, who we had adopted, she had a brain tumor. And so that's what actually moved us back to California, because we had to get her treatment, had to get her brain surgery. And, it's hard because we thought, and this is kind of one of those pieces where I think I've learned that sometimes the obstacle feels debilitating, but the obstacle actually can be the way. And that ends up being that piece that illuminates that next step in the journey. And while I would certainly have preferred to not have my daughter had a brain tumor and have to get surgery and go through that, It's what brought us back to California. And I thought, okay, the business might be done. I don't know what this is going to look like. We can't be here in Ethiopia to build it. But it was quite the opposite. Being back in California in the US probably is what enabled us to take that next step in the journey, because it put us in front of the market more. It put us in front of more people. And because it wasn't big enough, though, in 2015 to sustain our family, I ended up, before moving to Ethiopia, I worked in real estate development, doing sales and marketing. And so I jumped back into real estate with a friend who had a business back here, and he needed somebody to help run his business. And so I jumped back into that, and I called it, that was kind of my 8 to 5. And I told my friend, hey, we're still building this business, although I realize it needs to be secondary to what I'm doing. It's going to be my 5 to 8. And he's like, absolutely, love what you're doing, love the work that you're doing, I'm all for it. So from 2015 to, I would say, 2018, I was working 2 full-time jobs. And Brittany was also, when we moved back, 7 months pregnant with our 5th. So wow. It was like, there was some crazy moments with just all of that. And it was 2018 when we actually brought in, the timing was like insane. We had started talking to some angel investors. We had a business plan. We knew what we wanted to do to scale and grow this thing, but we knew we needed capital to do it.
Sure.
And we started talking to people, and we got our first check from an angel like the same week I was losing my paycheck from my real estate job and transitioning full-time to Parker Clay. And it just has been like incredible timing to be able to do that. And that was really, I would say 2018 was a pretty big moment for us at Parker Clay, where, we had been growing the business year over year pretty substantially, but 2018 was when we took some big steps, and we started to expand our supply chain. We expanded our factory. We bulked up on inventory and started kind of making some bigger purchases, got our first showroom, our own little retail showroom office space here in Santa Barbara. That was, I would say, some big moments. And then, from there, we just got some great like PR hits. We had a couple celebrities endorse us on national TV. I remember sitting in like a back of our little office on like cardboard boxes, right? The classic entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And we're on national TV, and like there's 4 of us in the back, and we all have phones up to our ears. We're like on our laptops, orders are printing out. We're like, what is happening? But it's, it was great, right? Those were like awesome beginning moments. And, since 2018, like we had a few years where we were doubling the business, scaling, and fast forward to today, which again, so many stories in between, but
yeah,
we've got about a 18,000 square foot factory in Ethiopia, over 200 employees, 80% are women. The majority of those women we've hired from that nonprofit, given them skills training, certifications. We have savings programs. We've got a food program where we subsidize 90% of the cost of lunches and meals, transportation. The whole bit, right? And we're really proud of where we've been. But yeah, it's been kind of that like brick by brick, step by step. Yeah, it's amazing kind of to go, wow, this is where we're at, and look back at where we started. So it's always fun to jog through those memories as I'm talking about it.
How did COVID work with you and the family being at home, I imagine, right?
Yeah.
Trying to run a company, trying to facilitate everything halfway across the world, layoffs right now. You've kind of built this amazing opportunity for women in tough positions. And now do you have to go to some and say that you have to lay them off? Like, was that a really dark time in the Parker Clay journey? Or since everybody's home, right, everybody's maybe at the computer more, maybe there's sales that are going up. Like there's kind of both sides to this that's possible, I guess. So I guess just take us through those couple of years, man, and how that went, just from a founder perspective, also from a father perspective.
Yeah. Hard. Unknowns like that are hard. We didn't know. And certainly, as I remember, I had a trip to New York right at the beginning of the year, before everything, it was just kind of more hearsay stuff was happening. and a bunch of editors and desk sides and all this like great PR that we were working on. And then after New York, I jumped on a flight to Ethiopia, and I kept seeing a lot more people in like these, it looked like hazmat suits, and it just like, what is happening? So I felt like the wave was like coming, and I was traveling right before it. And then sure enough, get home and everything's in lockdown, everything starts to blow up and get big. And, all that PR that we had talked about and everybody committed, they're like, nope, we're talking about COVID. It definitely changed that. And I think, as you mentioned, we have such a heart for our people and our team. And it was certainly, we're thinking about the business, but first we're always thinking about the people. And we have a number of women who have, immune compromised, challenges and things like that. We didn't know, no one really knew what was happening. And so we wanted to protect them. And so we did send home a few people, that we felt could be potentially, impacted by this, obviously covering their pay and making sure that they were taken care of until things kind of settled. We put in, just business continuity plans. I'm grateful that we planned really well early on to have some plans in place around that in terms of moving machines around, creating more space. And I'm proud that we actually didn't have to lay anyone off. We actually grew through COVID. We ended up producing frontline workers like masks and things like that for workers in Ethiopia that were actually honored by like the government and things like that. It was kind of a cool honor to get that from them. But yeah, no, we grew, we expanded our factory through COVID, and I would say I'm proud of what we did. And I think we did a really great job, but it was hard. Like there's no doubt about it. It was hard. It was stressful. And we were talking earlier, and I know I mentioned, it woke me up. I was probably a 5 or 6 a.m. wake up scenario. I started waking like 3 or 4 a.m. And I literally, it's still with me today. Like I just wake up early, so yeah, but we navigated it. And as a family, yeah, I mean, my kids are at home. I've got 5 kids. I've got a team on the US side as well, and all the same challenges, right? We're trying to be at home with the kids. One of the things that we did was got really creative. I mean, we were working in my garage for a bit. We had just like brainstorming sessions at the house with a few people. I mean, it was like very gritty during that time. We came up with this idea where we called it, we go together, because one of the sayings that we use is an African proverb. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we just came up with this idea to say, hey, we don't know what's coming, but we want to bring our community close. And we offered basically this campaign where you could back us. You could essentially buy a gift card and we would double it, but we would pay it out like down the road so that we would have the capital. We would have the capital up front and then be able to kind of gift you that or give you that gift card later and then double it again the following year. So, and I don't know that we totally knew what was going to happen, but we put together like this campaign, this video, and we just said, hey, like we're all in this together. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know, if you guys believe in what we're doing and who we are as a brand, help us, navigate this together. And it was awesome. Like people supported us, people shared it. And it was really just a cool moment to say, people were like, hell yeah, we're going to support you and we've got your back and we want to see this thing live and thrive and survive in the future. So that was a special moment, in those times. And yeah, navigating it all as a husband, as a father, as a business leader, I definitely probably have a few more gray hairs over the last.
I wanted to chat about scale for a second. Because anytime I, conversate, we had mentioned Tom's before as sort of being a pioneer. And then as they scaled, some things sort of fell apart a little bit, I think, for them. And when I'm talking to, impact brands, in the beginning, it's easy is a strong word, right? But it's much more, the vision is really clear. And it is, kind of day by day, and the impact is kind of what's driving you and you see how it works. But as scale happens, like how do you also have the ability to have that impact scale with you, right? Because as the business grows, now you have, might have more employees, or now you need to get even more leather, right? So now maybe there's strains on the ranchers, right? Because now they have to sort of produce more, and that could get a little bit weird from a consumer standpoint, and just from all kind of different things to talk about there. But now you have to provide even, maybe more health insurance and more things. Now you have investors, so now you have to make sure you're, you're profitable in a certain way. And like, I guess, how do you stay focused on, okay, as we scale as a business, we also want to maintain, not deviate away from why we actually started this thing?
Yeah, another great question. And I think mission drift is something that I think I've seen a number of times, where people will start out passionate about the mission, and then as it grows and scales and you've got all the other voices and demands, all of a sudden you end up somewhere completely different. And I think that is a cautionary tale with plenty of examples to look at. You got to put safeguards in place and put structure to your business. Like we're looking at, and there's been some great articles more recently about this whole conversation around even greenwashing, right? Where now H&M got called out, as they should have, and they're calling it green hushing, which I think is great. And the level of accountability around certain things, it's one of the reasons we became a B Corp, where we saw them really doing a thorough examine of the business and making sure what we say is actually what we do. And I can tell you now, having gone through an initial certification and a recertification where we just increased our score to 112, it's a lot of hard work to do that. And I think that's one great layer of accountability to add. We're also a public benefit corporation, so we're Delaware PBC, which requires us that it's not just shareholders, it's stakeholders, it's the general public, right? We have to ensure we are doing good to and for, like it's in our bylaws. And so I think that's another layer. And look, I think consumers nowadays, they're maturing. They've been around it, right, since the early days. Is this organic produce, to now you've got this whole conscious consumerism movement that is not going away. It's only getting stronger. People know when it's not truthful. People know when it's not authentic. And for us at Parker Clay, if you took away the impact, we just wouldn't exist, right? Like it's at our core, it's in our foundation, and it's who we are. Now, I do think other entrepreneurs out there who are looking to grow and scale something, it's important to really ingrain those things early on and set those things in place, because I guarantee there are things that are going to pull you away. I mean, I remember when we lived in Ethiopia, there was another brand we were helping out a little bit, and they talked a lot about women who were coming out of trafficking, and they used their stories a lot to kind of promote the products. Well, we're in this meeting and they said, hey, this particular woman, she went back into prostitution. And the owner was like, well, we can't tell that story, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually really bad, and I think that if you ever find yourself in a position where you're having to compromise, it's that little by little that all of a sudden you end up, you're a mile off where you wanted to be if you continue down that path. And I think you've got to put great people around you that kind of create that integrity, that sharpening, that accountability, right, that goes along with it, because it's going to be hard. It's definitely going to be a hard path, especially if you're trying to build something of scale that has that level of impact, and if you don't, there's going to be moments where it's easy to compromise. It's easy to go, well, maybe we can import something from somewhere else, or right, we can just not pay what we need to pay, because at the end of the day, like what we saw during COVID, kind of going back to your last question, there was tons of brands that canceled purchase orders.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And I understand from that business decision, that was the easier path. Well, one of the reasons why we have our own factory that we own is there's so many positives, but also in a time like that, we've got to keep it going, right? And we have to make sure that those salaries are being paid and that the things are continuing. And it pushed us to innovate. So it wasn't like a detriment to our business. It actually made us better. It made us more innovative. And I think that's the other side of it, right? Is that you think, oh, this is not a great thing. I wish I could just cancel purchase orders. But when you push yourself and you challenge yourself, I think that's what brings out some of the best opportunities and results. So it's, I think at the bottom line is, yeah, it's hard. Those scaling, we've seen examples of doing that poorly. And look, investment is a whole nother thing, right? The venture capital world it's a scary place. There is and in the past few years, because I've been talking to them, it is growth at all costs in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And how am I as a founder looking at that, when actually people come first and the impact work that we do? Yes, we believe we can create a thriving, profitable business, but not at the cost of people. And, we want to be smart. We want to be sustainable about this.
Well, that leads to sort of the next question is, you kind of opened up investment to customers, let's say, normal people. I believe that unaccredited investors can invest in this Parker Clay round. Tell me if I'm off here.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of different ways these investments can go. But basically it's like crowdfunding where people can get involved. Really, I always look at it as like consumers, right? Like if you have people shopping with you for 5, 7, 8 years, like why not? You're already making purchases from them. Like now you get to own a piece of the company. So I guess just talk us through that sort of position that you're in, where he says, hey, do we want to go direct to our fan base and our customers and offer this sort of opportunity? Walk us through that process. I know a lot of brands that have done, crowdfunding, some good, some bad. Just, I guess, walk us through your position and I guess like why'd you want to do it?
Yeah, we're really excited about this, and it's been something I've been watching and looking at, thinking about for past few years. I would say like we're at that typical Series A type investment, right? If you look at just in general business, we would typically be looking at a Series A, which involves institutional investors, accredited investors, and before crowdfunding and in particular what we're doing, which is a Regulation A+, startups were really limited to raising capital through friends, family, accredited investors, and traditional VC rounds. And in 2012, there was a federal Jobs Act that really enabled this type of investment and opening it up for private companies, open it up to the public. And for me, looking at it, I mean, you kind of just heard a lot of our story. It's been so much about community. And so what this round is to us is it's a community round. It's about allowing people to come into this with us, and many of whom who have already purchased our bags, who've been part of this with us through that, now gets to be able to be literally a seat at the table, so to say, as a shareholder in our company. So this is investment into the company as equity. And it's definitely a process. It's taken us a good portion of 2022 to getting things approved. You have to go through and get qualified by the SEC and put together audits, put together a ton of disclosure documents, which is great, right? It's for the protection of the public so that they have all of our information and details that are out there. But, why do we do it? Why do we decide to do it? I mean, Parker Clay is about believing in building a better way. And we just at our core believe that happens through community. I mean, community is why we exist as a B Corp. We want to raise the standards. We want to be part of the community. And with this Regulation A community round, we get to invite everybody to be part of it. And the cool part is that also it's a belief in kind of democratizing investment, right? Usually at our stage, a lot of smaller startup brands and businesses that you can only invest if you are typically an accredited investor, Can you imagine you were back in the garage with Jeff Bezos and Amazon, and he said, "Hey, could you put $500 in?" I mean, that would be worth millions today, and not that we're Amazon, nor do we want to be, but it's kind of that opportunity from being part of this. You bought a bag, you've been part of this, you've watched our journey, but you also get to be part of it and what we're building and scaling and growing, right? So there's an investment side, which is really exciting as well.
Speaking of, we'll kind of end here on a little bit of the future. It's been such a long journey so far, and you're at this point where there's so many, still just so much growth potential and so much opportunity for the brand globally. When you look, let's say, the next 5 years or so, what does that roadmap look like? What does success look like for you and the team?
Yeah, I mean, like I've said, people, right? We want to impact not hundreds of lives, not thousands, but millions of lives. And that's really what we want to see. We want to see more women that have that, purpose and ability to thrive, not just survive. We believe we've found an industry that is perfect for this. I mean, at the birthplace, right? Ethiopia is known as this kind of cradle of life, birthplace of civilization. Well, it's also just the source of such great material and people and even, the opportunities that are there. I think that for what we're seeing in the business sense, like there is a lot of movement in even manufacturing. You've got tons of jobs that are leaving Asia and China looking for a new home. And Africa is this young, vibrant population. 25% of the population is going to live there by 2050. I mean, we need to be talking more about Africa for sure. Yep. Even the industry itself is a huge opportunity. About $72 billion handbag, leather accessories industry right now. That's going to grow in the next 5 or so years. I mean, to probably over 100 billion. So it's just a massive industry that, we see continuing to grow and scale, and especially around that conscious consumerism, people wanting to know where things are made, how they're made. And that's at the cornerstone of it. And so we're really excited to be able to step into that more, to open up more of those doors and opportunities. We're currently the largest manufacturer and exporter of finished leather goods from Ethiopia to the world, and so we want to continue to be that leader in that space, to create more opportunities. We're even talking to the government of Ethiopia about opening up e-commerce for Africa and Ethiopia, which is super exciting.
That they kind of go down that road for a second.
Yeah. So as a leader in that industry in Ethiopia, the government has been just a great advocate, ally with us, and they see what we're doing in the e-commerce space. And I've told them, often, you guys, there's so much opportunity, and there's so many young entrepreneurs that need access to the market. We want to open that up. Yeah. There is a $42 billion funding gap for women entrepreneurs in Africa. Yet, the opportunity for GDP growth by bridging that gap is massive. So we are huge advocates, and really, I would say, trying to be ambassadors to the world about these opportunities. And as we've talked to them, I was meeting with one of the ministers, and he said, "Ian, can you be an advisor for us to, help us bring e-commerce to Ethiopia and open up Africa," which is super exciting and massive opportunity.
Amazing. Yeah.
And so we're kind of talking to them. I know that they've been working with Alibaba and trying to create a hub for e-commerce in Africa. So, we're still, I would say, early days, but it's definitely, things are in motion. And I think, we're going to look back in 10 years and go, oh my gosh, that this is a huge market, huge opportunity that you'd probably be late to the game if you haven't jumped in already.
Yeah, such a huge opportunity. I mean, that's amazing that, they see that and want to build that. I mean, you already have, the facility built, you already understand how to build out the Shopify part of things, automate things. I mean, you could probably just your facility alone and just start incubating, have brands come in and pay you a fee right, to kind of use your infrastructure. There could be so much stuff there. And obviously Ethiopia is big, but Africa is so, like you said, it's just so massive, and there's just not enough. I have friends there, and the things that they tell me, it's just like, why are they not just higher on the agenda of, I mean, they're so close to the US, yet we're so, really allocated. Like we have this consumer partnership with China, but Africa is so much more closer, and have, like you said, a young base. It's really smart. I mean, they understand technology. I think it's just, how do you combine all those things and just, like you said, grow GDP at a totally different level. And I'm just such a believer in technology. And yeah, I think it's such a secret. And it's like weird. It's like it's one of the biggest continents in the world, right? But it's somehow it's still hiding in plain sight, so to speak. So that's amazing, man. I hope that collaboration continues. I hope there's much more movement there. Would love to have them on and talk about that. If there's anybody interesting you think we should talk to about, from a government level of like, what's the process? Like, what's their roadmap? Because that's just such a obviously opportunity opening for, founders and completely new workforce. So
100% agree. Yeah.
So I'll just say, thanks so much for taking the time, Ian. It's been a long time coming. I'm super happy we got to do this. Obviously, best of luck to you and the team and stateside, and then obviously to the team in Ethiopia for hopefully the next decades to come. We'll link all kind of things in the show notes so people can check a bunch of things out.
Grant, thanks so much for making the time, and it's been great chatting.